Debunked, separating the rational from the irrational in modern conspiracy theories by Casey Lytle. Episode 2, The Conspiracy Mindset. So where are we going with this one? What do we mean by the conspiracy mindset? We're basically going into some of the cognitive traits in there, some of the things that help support and lead to the belief, and some of the kind of illogical traits that they believe are logical. First off, we have to address conspiracy theorists to begin with, because when you think of a conspiracy theorist, you tend to think of the tinfoil hat wearing basement dweller down there with charts on the walls and strings attached from one to the next. There can be people at the extremes who fit such a stereotype, but the majority of people who believe in conspiracy theories are just everyday people. Where they are different from the more extreme believers is that they don't really dive very deep into the beliefs. They simply believe that there are unexplained elements or suspicious coincidences that vary from whatever the official account is. They're not really heavily invested in it. They're kind of just passerby with the beliefs. They don't think very deeply or dive very deeply into it, questioning it. And that's something we will be doing in this series. We will dive deep into them as far as what is the belief, what would it actually take to carry out a belief like that, and is that reasonable and rational to think that would go on? On the surface, the casual believer just kind of throws all the details into what I call the conspiracy bucket, and that is the bucket of they have ways, you don't know what they can do, kind of giving the people carrying out the cover-ups an almost omnipotent power to carry out anything. And kind of when you're just superficially going through there, passing by that bucket, it just comes with the belief that there are powerful groups who can carry out things and keep them covered up. That's where the casual user would throw things into that bucket. And there are people who carry out secret things and cover them up because things get revealed. That's one of the things that feeds the possibility of other conspiracies, are the ones that have been uncovered and revealed, such as the drug experiments, the LSD experiments the government carried out in the 50s and 60s. That all got declassified later on. That was simply rumor and conspiracy theory for a long time until in the 70s that was officially declassified, and we found out that really did happen. So that sets up the idea that, yeah, this stuff can be done. But it still requires that for us to believe in something, that it actually makes logical sense. The government's cover-up of those experiments, the motivation for doing it, the ability to carry it out, having the resources, the ability to keep it secret, it was all well within a rational range, something that would be likely to be carried out. So what is the problem with the conspiracy bucket? The problem is when it's used as just a catch-all to dismiss evidence that counters your belief. You just throw that into they have ways, they know how. So if you point out how a certain conspiracy they believe in would take way too many people, be extremely complex, well, they have ways to do that. You don't know what they can do. That's the conspiracy bucket that helps basically dismiss any countering evidence. And we kind of get into a contradiction here. Actually, there's several contradictions in the mindset of the conspiracy theorist. One is that they will tell you need to open your mind, think for yourself, question everything, when they themselves do not question everything. They don't question their own beliefs. In fact, they are very rigid in holding on to their specific conspiracy belief. And will not question it, will not consider the evidence. Evidence against it goes into the bucket. They don't come up with their own theories. They're not creating these theories themselves. They're reciting conspiracy theories they've heard from others or read from other sources that they trust. So they're not questioning, and they're not really thinking them through themselves. They're not making them up. Now, this kind of trouble in questioning your own beliefs, this is something that's common in all of us. We spend a lot of neural resource to protect our belief structures against potentially countering evidence. And usually that's a functional thing, because especially in the information age, if your mind was open to any new information that came to it, whether it seemed valid or not, you'd be changing your opinions about things every time you heard something. So it is functional to put up kind of a level of cognitive defense against countering information. Where that becomes dysfunctional is when you're protecting wrong information and dismissing correct stuff. How can you tell when something's correct? Well, if you keep getting hit with that same evidence and you don't have good support for the belief that you want to hang on to. So again, that's something we all have a problem with. It's really easy to point at someone else's beliefs and point out where they're wrong or flawed or illogical, or where they are being misled by misinformation. It is really difficult for us to turn that same lens on our own beliefs and question them. Because when we do that, it feels like we're questioning the overall belief itself. That's why any little meme online that fits something that you believe and you wish was true, you may automatically accept it instead of questioning it. Because if you question it, am I questioning my broader belief that is supported by it? And none of us like to do that. So the other thing that you'll see related to this in the conspiracy theory mindset is kind of a forced dichotomy in belief. What do I mean by that? It means if you dismiss their specific conspiracy, they jump to the extreme and believe that you must believe everything the government tells you. You know, you don't question anything. You're a sheep. You know, it is possible to doubt a specific conspiracy theory, but still have questions about the overall event. You know, you can be suspicious of the official record of what the government knew, what the United States government knew prior to the September 11th attacks, and feel that maybe there was an awareness there that they never made public, that they let the attacks happen. You can be suspicious of that and believe that, and still not believe that the towers were intentionally detonated and brought down. You can believe certain pieces and think, okay, that could have happened. That could be rational. But then on other aspects of it, you could say that's probably not likely. That would take too many people. It would take too much time. It would be too hard to keep that covered up. But the person who believes that more irrational one, they're going to think, if you can't believe that, because they believe it, it seems obvious to them, it should be obvious to you, that you must be one of the people who just falls for all the official accounts and the official records. So the irony here is that the conspiracy theorists themselves, although claiming to be very open-minded and free thinkers, are actually not very open-minded, because anything that supports the conspiracy belief they have, they let it right in and will accept it. And again, they close their minds to any countering evidence, but call you the closed-minded sheep for not believing their specific conspiracy, right? So again, towers detonated, you realize that that's probably really unlikely, nearly impossible to carry that off, but still believe there were suspicious elements of the official account. The moon landing, if you don't believe the moon landing was faked, that doesn't mean you believe every official record of everything. There's a lot. I mean, the moon landing hoax idea has been debunked so many times that it's not even worth arguing anymore. But the ones who believe it will still continue to believe it. And again, part of the problem there is how many people it would take, how many materials, and the various claims. For example, the easy ones are the claims that there was obviously multiple light sources because of the way some shadows don't align. Or one astronaut coming out of the lander looks fairly well lit, but he's in shadow all the rest of the way around him. Those are just factors of light reflecting off the lunar surface. Different objects being at different distances from the camera will appear, and at different elevations will appear to not align. there's one key flaw to the belief of multiple lights that conspiracy theorists do not answer and throw into the bucket. And that is, if you did have multiple light sources, then in some of the pictures somewhere there should be signs of multiple shadows. Multiple lights will produce multiple shadows. You will at least see images of faded shadows near the primary shadows. If the astronaut coming out of the lander has a light shining on him, why is that light not affecting any of the rest of the shadow? Why is the rest of the shadow around him consistently dark? And that's something that doesn't always get addressed. The idea that the 2020 election results were faked in some way and millions of fake votes were thrown in. The safeguards that are in place on moving and counting ballots and verifying ballots is such that we find little discrepancies in different voting districts. You see cases popping on the news where they found 5 or 6 invalid votes or duplicate votes or invalid ballots. If you have a system that can find a small number like that, how possible would it be to keep millions covered up, to sneak them into the system? You wouldn't be able to do it. It would set off red flags all over the place. It would also create a statistical anomaly compared to the polling. If you, the 2016 results and the 2020 results, even when a certain candidate got more votes in a state or took a state that the other one had a chance at, the results were all within the margin of error that the polls had been predicting. If you were going to fake millions of votes, those would cause a candidate to fall outside that margin of error, and that would set off red flags as well. But again, if it's something you want to believe, you throw it into that conspiracy bucket of, well, they have ways to do it. They could do this, they could do that. What about that tub that was pulled out from under a table? Well, what about it? Seeing someone pull a tub out from under a table tells us nothing about what is in the tub. It could have been a bunch of beer on ice. The official record from that one was it was just more ballots, and they had just stuck them under there until they were ready for them. It's not necessarily anything suspicious about it. So what is the big emotional motivation here in hanging on to these beliefs? It's like any other belief that we hold very powerfully and have a lot of investment in. It creates a sense of control, a sense of comfort, a sense of being able to predict your world. And the conspiracy beliefs reinforce the suspicion that you may have. And this is something common, as you could probably guess, with conspiracy theorists, is they rate high in suspicion of authority figures, especially the government. Unless it's a government figure they like, then for some reason that person is outside the conspiracy or someone helping you fight the conspirators. So it gives you a sense that you're seeing through the lies, that you are seeing things the rest of the population is not, therefore kind of gives you a bit of a sense of superiority with the people who follow the official records or don't believe in the conspiracies. It also makes you feel like whereas other people are a threat to be manipulated by these people, that you are not a threat to be manipulated, that you are somehow immunized from that by being able to see through all of these. Now, a big problem with that is that a strong, unwavering belief is the fastest route to manipulating someone. And it doesn't have to be a conspiracy belief. Any belief that you have a strong emotional investment in, a manipulator will come at you through that belief. What do I mean by that? If I want to manipulate a very devoutly religious person, I'm not going to come at them from the outside as someone outside their religious belief. I'm going to stage myself as a believer just like them, as part of their in-group. So I'm coming at them from within their belief. If it's a strong political affiliation someone has, I'm going to come at them speaking the language of their party as if I am a member of the party as well. I am a believer of all the same things they are. What that does is it makes you a more trusted source. It makes it less likely that you will be questioned or that radar will be on watching for manipulation. And it'd be very easy then for me to start tweaking your belief from within your belief structure tweaking your belief in the direction I want it to go. Propaganda in general works this way. Propaganda is not generally aimed at the other side to convert the other side. Propaganda is aimed at its own side to take its own believers and tweak their beliefs in the direction you want it to go. That's why it's so easy to see the other side's propaganda and think, how ridiculous is it that they fall for that? But it's really hard to see your side's propaganda because to you, it's truth. It's just reciting things that are true. It's something not only are you not likely to question, but you don't want to question it, right? So again, a big part of it is just that sense of control and answering questions about your world and reinforcing your beliefs in the world. There can also be a protective element to it. Imagine the idea of, say, that the September 11th attacks were an inside job, that it was our government that did that, blamed it on terrorists so that it gave us a blank check for military intervention in the Middle East. We could openly engage in action there rather than the covert stuff we'd been doing for decades. What would be so empowering or feel safe about that belief? Well, if it really is foreign terrorists launching terrorist attacks on the U.S., that could happen anytime and anywhere, so that could be a threat to me, right? But if I believe it was a one-time staged thing by my own government, and even believed that possibly people didn't even die in it, that the records of the people on the planes were faked, that means it's not a direct threat to me. It's not going to happen in my state or in my town, and I'll feel safer. Same thing with mass shootings. If I believe that random people could show up in my grocery store and start shooting while I'm in there, that's scary. That is a threat to me. But if I believe those things are staged and that the supposed victims and the victims are faked records and the families are crisis actors, a staged thing is something that won't happen to me. That's no threat to me, and it makes my world feel safer by believing that. So that would create a lot of emotional investment and a lot of real need to believe that, because now believing in the faked events is a safety issue for me. It's scary if what I believe isn't true. It's very comforting if what I believe is true. So as another cognitive element here, you may have already guessed where we're going with this one. Sensitivity to fear is a big component here. And basically sensitivity to almost any negative emotion is a common trait you find there. So that was a very quick jump into there because I don't want to just verbatim say everything that's in the book, but we hit the key points on there, and we're ready to start actually picking apart a few actual conspiracy theories and putting them on our spectrum to see where they fall. So if you're ready for more, let's head off into our next, eventually into our next episode.